Camilla stood at the grand entrance of St. Michael's Cathedral, her heart racing beneath the layers of silk and lace. Today was supposed to be perfect. She had planned every detail for 2 years, from the white roses lining the aisle to the string quartet playing softly in the corner. Her wedding dress sparkled under the morning light streaming through the stained glass windows, and her veil floated behind her like a cloud. Her father squeezed her arm gently. "Ready, sweetheart?" he whispered, his eyes misty with emotion. Camilla nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Through the tall wooden doors, she could see 200 guests turning in their seats, craning their necks to catch the first glimpse of the bride. At the altar, Marcus waited with his hands clasped in front of him. Even from this distance, Camilla could see his nervous smile. They had met 5 years ago at a coffee shop when he accidentally spilled his latte on her laptop. What started as an embarrassing apology turned into hours of conversation, and now here they were, about to promise forever to each other. The music swelled, signaling her entrance. Camilla took her first step down the aisle, and that's when she felt the weight of her grandmother's necklace against her collarbone. It was the something old in her collection of wedding traditions. The antique pearl necklace had been in her family for 4 generations, passed down from mother to daughter on their wedding days. Her grandmother had given it to her 3 months ago, during one of their final conversations before she passed away. "This necklace has seen many love stories, my dear," Grandma Rose had said, her wrinkled hands trembling as she fastened it around Camilla's neck during the fitting. "It brought luck to me, to your mother, and to her mother before that. Wear it on your special day, and remember that love is the greatest treasure of all." Camilla had cried that day, knowing it would be one of their last moments together. The necklace became more than just jewelry. It was a connection to her grandmother, a piece of her family's history, and a symbol of all the strong women who came before her. Now, as she walked slowly down the aisle, Camilla's hand instinctively touched the pearls. Each guest she passed smiled warmly at her. Her mother dabbed tears from her eyes with a handkerchief. Her best friend Sarah gave her an encouraging thumbs up from the 3rd row. Marcus's little nephew threw flower petals with enthusiastic handfuls instead of the delicate sprinkle they had practiced. Everything felt dreamlike and perfect until Camilla reached the middle of the aisle. She felt a slight tug at her neck as the necklace caught on a thread of her veil. Without thinking, she reached up to adjust it, and in that moment, disaster struck. The old clasp, weakened by decades of use, suddenly gave way. The sound of pearls scattering across the marble floor echoed through the cathedral like gunshots. Time seemed to slow down as Camilla watched in horror. The beautiful strand broke apart, sending creamy white pearls bouncing and rolling in every direction. Guests gasped collectively. Some jumped from their seats trying to catch the runaway pearls before they rolled under the pews. But that wasn't the worst part. As the necklace fell, something else tumbled out from behind the largest center pearl. A small folded piece of yellowed paper fluttered down and landed at Camilla's feet. She stood frozen, staring at it. The paper looked old, much older than the necklace itself. It had been hidden inside a hollow compartment behind the main pearl, a secret space she never knew existed. Her father bent down quickly and picked up the note before anyone else could see it clearly. He pressed it into Camilla's trembling hand. "Keep going," he whispered urgently in her ear. "We'll figure this out later. Marcus is waiting." But Camilla couldn't move. Her mind raced with questions. Why was there a hidden note in her grandmother's necklace? How long had it been there? Did Grandma Rose know about it? The weight of the small paper in her palm felt heavier than the entire necklace had around her neck. Marcus took a few steps forward, concern written across his face. The priest looked confused, unsure whether to pause the ceremony or continue. The string quartet faltered, their bows hovering uncertainly over their instruments. 200 guests sat in awkward silence, waiting to see what would happen next. Sarah rushed forward from her seat and quickly began gathering the scattered pearls, dropping them into her small purse. Other bridesmaids joined her, creating a flurry of activity that gave Camilla a moment to collect herself. She looked down at the note in her hand. Part of her wanted to unfold it right there, to read whatever message had been hidden for who knows how many years. Her mother appeared at her side, smoothing down Camilla's veil and whispering, "Breathe, honey. It's just a necklace. You're still getting married today." But they both knew it was more than just a necklace. It was a family heirloom, and now it held a mystery that couldn't be ignored. Camilla made a decision. She tucked the note into the small pocket hidden in the folds of her dress, straightened her shoulders, and looked directly at Marcus. His concerned expression melted into a relieved smile when he saw her determination. She wouldn't let this mystery ruin their perfect day, but she also knew that as soon as the ceremony ended, she would need to uncover the secret her grandmother's necklace had been keeping all these years. Taking her father's arm once more, Camilla continued down the aisle. Her steps were steady now, purposeful. Whatever that note contained, whatever secret it held, it had waited this long. It could wait a few more hours. But in the back of her mind, questions swirled like a storm, and she knew that this wedding day would be remembered for more than just the vows she was about to take. The ceremony continued, but Camilla barely heard the words. She stood beside Marcus, holding his hands, repeating the vows they had written together, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. The note in her pocket seemed to burn against her hip, demanding attention. Every few moments her hand would drift toward it unconsciously, and Marcus would squeeze her fingers gently, bringing her back to the present. The priest spoke about love, commitment, and the journey they were beginning together. Normally, Camilla would have been hanging on every word, but today the speech felt like background noise. She kept thinking about her grandmother, about the necklace, about what could possibly be so important that it needed to be hidden away for decades. When it came time to exchange rings, Camilla's hands shook slightly. Marcus noticed and gave her a questioning look, but she forced a smile and slipped the gold band onto his finger. He did the same for her, his touch warm and steady. For a moment, she forgot about the mystery and focused on his eyes, those kind brown eyes that had captivated her from their very first meeting. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest announced, his voice booming through the cathedral. "You may kiss the bride." Marcus pulled her close and kissed her softly while the guests erupted in applause and cheers. Camilla kissed him back, trying to pour all her love and attention into that moment, trying to make it the perfect memory she had always imagined. But even as they pulled apart and turned to face their guests as a married couple, she could feel the weight of the hidden note. The recessional music played, and they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand. Camilla smiled and waved at the guests, but her eyes kept searching for the scattered pearls. Sarah had gathered most of them, she hoped. But what if some had rolled too far? What if someone stepped on one? The thought of losing even a single pearl from her grandmother's necklace made her heart ache. Outside the cathedral, the photographer arranged them for pictures. Marcus wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her close. "Are you okay?" he whispered between poses. "I know you're upset about the necklace." Camilla leaned into him, grateful for his understanding. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just shocked, that's all. It happened so suddenly." She couldn't tell him about the note yet, not when they were surrounded by wedding guests and photographers. This was something she needed to understand first. Alone. The reception was held at a beautiful garden venue just 10 minutes from the cathedral. White tents covered round tables decorated with centerpieces of roses and candles. A band played soft jazz music while guests mingled and sipped champagne. Camilla and Marcus made their rounds, thanking everyone for coming, accepting congratulations and well wishes. But Camilla's mind remained distracted. Every time someone mentioned the necklace incident, she tensed up. Her mother pulled her aside at one point and whispered, "Sarah collected all the pearls she could find. They're in her purse. We can have it restrung next week." Camilla nodded gratefully but didn't mention the note. Something told her to keep that discovery private, at least for now. During dinner, while Marcus chatted with his groomsmen at the head table, Camilla finally found a quiet moment. She excused herself to use the restroom, but instead, she slipped into a small reading room at the edge of the garden. Her hands trembled as she reached into her dress pocket and pulled out the yellowed paper. The note was small, maybe 3 inches square, folded multiple times to fit inside the necklace's secret compartment. The paper felt fragile, like it might crumble at any moment. Camilla carefully unfolded it, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The handwriting was elegant but shaky, written in faded black ink. It took her eyes a moment to adjust to the old-fashioned script. When she finally made out the words, her breath caught in her throat. "To whoever finds this, know that this necklace was purchased with blood money. My husband stole from good people to buy it for me. I have lived with this guilt for 30 years. The Hartley family deserves to know the truth. God forgive us all." Camilla read the note 3 times, each reading making her feel more confused and disturbed. Margaret. That was her great-great-grandmother's name. She had died long before Camilla was born, but family stories described her as a saint, a woman who volunteered at the church and helped everyone in the community. The idea that she had been carrying this terrible secret was impossible to imagine. And who were the Hartley family? Camilla had never heard that name mentioned in any family story. What did blood money mean? Had her great-great-grandfather been a thief? A criminal? The implications made her stomach turn. Everything she thought she knew about her family history suddenly felt uncertain. A knock on the door made her jump.
Camilla?
Are you in there? It was Sarah's voice. They're about to do the first dance. Camilla quickly refolded the note and tucked it back into her pocket. She took a deep breath, checked her reflection in the mirror, and forced her face into a smile. Coming, she called out. As she returned to the reception, she saw Marcus waiting for her on the dance floor. The band had started playing their song, the one they had chosen months ago. Marcus extended his hand to her, his smile warm and loving. Camilla took his hand and let him pull her into his arms. They swayed together as their guests watched and photographed them. Marcus whispered in her ear, "This is it. This is our beginning. Everything from here on out is our story." But Camilla couldn't help thinking that their story was now tangled up with an old one, a dark secret from generations past. As they danced, she wondered what she should do with this information. Should she tell her mother? Should she try to find the Hartley family? Or should she pretend she never saw the note and let the secret stay buried where it had been for so many decades? The song ended and guests applauded. Marcus kissed her forehead and led her back to their table. As Camilla sat down, she caught sight of her mother across the room, laughing with relatives. Her mother looked so happy, so proud. How would she react to learning that their family heirloom represented something shameful, rather than something to treasure? The rest of the reception passed in a blur. Camilla cut the cake, tossed her bouquet, and danced with her father. Through it all, the note weighed on her mind like an anchor. By the time she and Marcus climbed into the limousine to head to their hotel, she was exhausted, not from the celebration but from carrying this heavy secret. In the limo, Marcus loosened his tie and pulled her close. "Mrs. Richardson," he said with a grin, "how does it feel?" Camilla snuggled against him, grateful for his solid presence. "It feels good," she said honestly. "But Marcus, something happened today. Something I need to tell you about." His expression turned serious. "What is it?" Camilla pulled out the note and handed it to him. As he read it, his eyebrows drew together in confusion and concern. When he finished, he looked at her with questions in his eyes. "What are you going to do?" That was the question that had been haunting her all evening. What was she going to do? The truth was she had no idea. Camilla and Marcus had planned a 2-week honeymoon in Hawaii, but neither of them could truly relax. The note had cast a shadow over what should have been the happiest time of their lives. On their 3rd day, while sitting on the beach watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, Camilla finally voiced what had been bothering her since the wedding. "I need to find out the truth," she said quietly. Marcus had been building a small castle in the sand, but he stopped and looked at her. "I knew you'd say that eventually. You're too curious to let this go." He was right. Camilla had always been the type of person who needed answers. When she was 8, she had spent an entire summer trying to figure out who kept leaving flowers on her neighbor's doorstep. It turned out to be the mailman who had been secretly in love with the widow for years. Camilla had helped bring them together, and they were still married today. "I can't just ignore it," Camilla said, running her fingers through the warm sand. Margaret, my great-great-grandmother, she was suffering. She lived with this guilt for 30 years, according to the note. And somewhere out there, maybe the Hartley family still exists. Maybe they deserve to know what happened. Marcus nodded slowly. "But you realize this could open up a whole can of worms, right? Your family might not thank you for digging up old secrets. And what if what you find is really bad? What if your great-great-grandfather did something terrible?" Camilla had considered all of this. She had barely slept the past few nights, tossing and turning, while Marcus snored softly beside her. "I know," she admitted. "But I keep thinking about Margaret and how she must have felt. She hid that note hoping someone would find it one day. She wanted the truth to come out. I feel like I owe it to her to at least try." Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. "Okay, then we'll do this together. But let's at least enjoy the rest of our honeymoon first. When we get back home, we'll start investigating." Camilla agreed, though she found it hard to fully enjoy the paradise around her. She tried to swim in the clear blue water, tried to appreciate the delicious food and the beautiful resort, but her mind kept wandering back to that note. Who was Margaret's husband? What exactly had he done? And most importantly, who were the Hartleys? The remaining days of the honeymoon crawled by. Camilla found herself browsing ancestry websites on her phone when Marcus was napping, trying to piece together her family tree. She learned that Margaret had been married to a man named Thomas Whitmore, and they had 3 children together. Thomas had owned a general store in their small town, which eventually grew into a successful business that was passed down through generations until it was sold in the 1970s. On the surface, Thomas seemed like a respectable businessman and family man. There were no criminal records that Camilla could find, no newspaper articles about scandals or theft. Whatever he had done, it had either been kept very quiet or happened so long ago that the records had been lost to time. When they finally returned home, Camilla threw herself into research with an intensity that worried Marcus. Their apartment became covered in papers, printouts, and sticky notes. She created a timeline of her family history, marking important dates and events. She ordered copies of old census records, death certificates, and property deeds. Her mother called one evening while Camilla was knee-deep in documents. "Sweetheart, I had the necklace restrung for you. Sarah gave me all the pearls she collected. Miraculously, we only lost 2. You can barely tell they're missing." Camilla's throat tightened. "Thanks, Mom, that means a lot." She wanted to ask her mother about Margaret and Thomas, about the Hartley family, but something held her back. She needed more information first before she upset her mother with questions about potential family crimes. After 3 weeks of research, Camilla finally found something significant. She was searching through old newspaper archives from the town where Margaret and Thomas had lived when she came across an article from 1889. The headline read, "Local family faces ruin after bank foreclosure." The article described how the Hartley family, who had owned a successful farm for 2 generations, lost everything when the local bank suddenly called in their loan. Unable to pay, the Hartleys were forced to sell their land at auction for a fraction of its worth. The father, William Hartley, had died 6 months later from what the article called a broken heart. His wife and 3 children had to move to the city to find work in factories. Camilla's hands shook as she read. The article was dated March 1889. According to her family records, that was the exact same month that Thomas Whitmore had purchased the building that became his successful general store. It was also the same month he had bought the expensive pearl necklace for Margaret. The connection seemed too obvious to be a coincidence. Thomas must have been involved with the bank somehow. Maybe he had bribed someone to foreclose on the Hartley farm early. Maybe he had inside information about the family's financial troubles and took advantage of it. Whatever the details were, it seemed clear that Thomas had profited from the Hartley family's destruction. Camilla showed Marcus what she had found. He whistled low and sat down heavily on the couch. "That's pretty damning. But how do you prove Thomas was directly responsible? The article doesn't mention him at all." "I know," Camilla said, pacing across their living room. "I need to dig deeper. There has to be more information somewhere." She spent the next week combing through every record she could find. She discovered that Thomas had been friends with the bank president. She found property records showing that Thomas had purchased several parcels of land from the auction of Hartley possessions, always for suspiciously low prices. The evidence was circumstantial but mounting. It painted a picture of a man who had used his connections and inside knowledge to profit from another family's misfortune. No wonder Margaret had felt guilty. She had worn pearls bought with money that should have belonged to the Hartleys. But the biggest question remained. Where were the Hartleys now? Did any descendants still exist? Camilla began searching genealogy sites for William Hartley's children. She found records of them moving to Chicago, but after that the trail went cold. Names changed through marriage, people died, records were lost or destroyed. Just when she was about to give up, Camilla received a message through one of the ancestry websites she had been using. Someone named Jennifer Parker had seen her inquiries about the Hartley family. "My great-grandmother was a Hartley," the message read. "She used to tell stories about how her family lost everything in the 1800s. I always thought they were just sad tales, but now I'm curious." "Why are you looking for information about them?" Camilla stared at the message for a long time. This was it. She had found a living descendant of the Hartley family. Now she had to decide what to do next. Should she tell this Jennifer Parker the truth about what Thomas Whitmore had done? Should she offer some kind of compensation, even though the crime had happened over 100 years ago? Marcus came home from work to find her sitting in the dark, her laptop screen the only light in the room. "You found something," he said. It wasn't a question. He could read her moods by now. Camilla turned the laptop toward him so he could read Jennifer's message. His eyes widened. Wow, this is real now. This isn't just old records and history anymore. There's an actual person on the other end. Camilla nodded. "I know, and I have no idea what to say to her." Camilla spent 3 days crafting and recrafting her response to Jennifer Parker. Every version sounded wrong. Too formal, too casual, too apologetic. Not apologetic enough. How do you tell someone that their ancestor was wronged by your ancestor over a century ago? How do you even begin that conversation? Finally, Marcus sat down with her and said, "Just be honest. Tell her the truth. That's all you can do." So Camilla wrote a simple message explaining how she had found a note hidden in her grandmother's necklace, how it had led her to research her family history, and how she had discovered the connection between the Whitmore and Hartley families. She included copies of the articles and records she had found. Jennifer's response came faster than Camilla expected. "I need to meet you in person. This is too important to discuss over email. I live in Boston. Can you come here or should I come to you?" Camilla and Marcus lived in Philadelphia, about 6 hours from Boston. They decided to drive up the following weekend. Camilla was nervous the entire trip, her leg bouncing anxiously as Marcus navigated the highway traffic. What if Jennifer was angry? What if she demanded money or threatened to sue? Camilla knew that legally, something that happened in 1889 was far beyond any statute of limitations, but morally, that was a different question entirely. They met Jennifer at a small coffee shop near Boston Common. Camilla recognized her immediately from her profile picture. A woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and dark curly hair pulled back in a ponytail. Jennifer stood when they entered and waved them over to a corner table. "Thank you for coming all this way," Jennifer said as they sat down. She had papers spread across the table, old photographs and documents. "I've been doing my own research since we started talking. My grandmother told me stories, but I never knew if they were true. Now I know they were." Jennifer pushed a photograph across the table. It showed a stern-looking man with a thick beard standing next to a woman in a simple dress. 3 children stood in front of them, all looking serious. "That's William Hartley and his family, taken about a year before they lost the farm. My great-great-grandparents." Camilla picked up the photo carefully, studying the faces. These were real people whose lives had been destroyed. Suddenly, the story wasn't just dates and records anymore. It was human beings who had suffered. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "For what my family did to yours," Jennifer shook her head. "You didn't do anything. This happened before any of us were born, but I appreciate you trying to uncover the truth. My grandmother always said there was more to the story than just bad luck. She said someone had cheated them, but she never knew who." Over coffee, Jennifer shared what she knew about her family's history after they lost the farm. William's wife, Martha, had worked in a textile factory 14 hours a day to support her children. Their youngest son had died at age 12 from an accident at the factory where he worked. The other 2 children grew up and had families, but they lived in poverty for generations. "My grandmother was the first person in our family to go to college," Jennifer said. "She worked 3 jobs to pay for it. She became a teacher and made sure all her children and grandchildren got educated. She was determined to break the cycle of poverty that started when her great-grandfather lost that farm." Camilla listened with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, her own family had thrived. The money Thomas made from his store, built partly on the ruins of the Hartley farm, had been invested wisely. Each generation had done better than the last. Camilla's parents were comfortable, and she had never worried about money growing up. The contrast was stark and painful. "There's something else I need to show you," Jennifer said, pulling out a brittle piece of paper protected in a clear sleeve. "This is a letter my great-great-grandmother Martha wrote to her sister in 1890, a year after they lost everything. I found it in a box of old family things when my grandmother died." Camilla took the letter and began to read. Martha's handwriting was shaky but clear. She described the day the bank came to foreclose, how William had pleaded for more time. She wrote about seeing Thomas Whitmore at the auction, buying their possessions for pennies on the dollar, And then, near the end, Martha wrote something that made Camilla's blood run cold. I saw Mr. Whitmore with Mr. Henderson from the bank, and I swear they were laughing. William confronted them, asked them if they had planned this all along. Mr. Whitmore just smiled and said business was business. That night, William came home and cried for the first time in our marriage. He said he felt like a fool for trusting the wrong people. So Thomas and the bank president definitely worked together. Marcus said, reading over Camilla's shoulder. This proves it wasn't just circumstantial. Jennifer nodded. My family always believed it was a conspiracy, but we never had proof. This note from your great-great-grandmother combined with this letter from mine, it confirms everything. Camilla felt sick. She had grown up hearing stories about what a great man Thomas Whitmore was, how he had built the family business from nothing through hard work and smart decisions. No one had ever mentioned that his success was built on someone else's tragedy. Why did Margaret stay with him? She wondered aloud. Why didn't she leave if she knew what he had done? Because it was 1889, Jennifer said gently. Women didn't have many choices back then. She probably depended on him completely, and maybe she loved him despite what he had done. People are complicated. They talked for hours, piecing together the full story from both sides. Thomas and the bank president had conspired to foreclose on the Hartley farm early, before William could gather the money he needed. They had made sure the auction was poorly advertised so they could buy everything cheap. Thomas had used the profits to expand his business, and he had bought Margaret the pearl necklace as a way to celebrate his success and perhaps to ease his own conscience. But Margaret had been unable to wear the necklace without thinking about where the money came from. At some point, she had written the note and hidden it in the secret compartment, hoping that someday the truth would come out. She had worn the necklace at family events because that was expected of her, but it must have felt like wearing a chain of guilt. As the afternoon turned to evening, Jennifer said something that surprised Camilla. You know, I'm not angry with you. I'm actually grateful. My whole life I knew something bad had happened to my family, but I never knew the details. Now I do, now the story makes sense. And honestly, knowing that Margaret felt guilty about it, knowing that she tried to leave a message behind, that makes me feel better. It means at least one person in your family cared about what happened to mine. Camilla reached across the table and took Jennifer's hand. What can I do to make this right? I know I can't change the past, but there has to be something. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. I need to think about that. This is a lot to process. But Camilla, you've already done something important. You've given my family's story a voice. You've proven that what happened to us mattered. That's worth more than you might think. They exchanged phone numbers and promised to stay in touch. On the drive home, Camilla was quiet, lost in thought. Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. You did a good thing today, he said. You faced the truth instead of hiding from it. Margaret would be proud. Camilla hoped that was true. But she also knew this was far from over. Now that she knew the full story, she had to decide what to do with it. Should she tell her mother and the rest of her family? Should she try to make some kind of restitution to Jennifer and her family? The question swirled in her mind as the miles rolled past. Camilla waited 2 weeks before telling her mother. She needed time to prepare herself for the conversation, to gather all the evidence and to think through how to present the information. She knew her mother would be upset, defensive perhaps, or maybe even dismissive. The Whitmore family history was something her mother was proud of, and this news would shatter that pride. She invited her mother to lunch at their favorite Italian restaurant, the same place where they had planned the wedding. Her mother arrived looking happy and relaxed, wearing a new blue dress and carrying a shopping bag. I found the cutest picture frames on sale, she said, settling into her chair. I thought you might want some for your wedding photos. Camilla's heart sank. Her mother was in such a good mood and she was about to ruin it. They ordered salads and made small talk about the honeymoon, about Marcus's new project at work, about the neighbor's dog that kept barking at night. Finally, when their plates were cleared and coffee arrived, Camilla took a deep breath. Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Grandma Rose's necklace. Her mother's face brightened. Oh yes, I've been meaning to give it back to you. It's at home, all fixed and good as new. That's not what I mean, Camilla said carefully. She reached into her purse and pulled out the folded note, now protected in a plastic sleeve. When the necklace broke at my wedding, something fell out of it. A hidden note. Her mother's smile faded as she took the note and read it. Camilla watched her face go through a series of emotions. Confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally something that looked like anger. "This is ridiculous," her mother said, pushing the note back across the table. "Margaret would never write something like this. Someone must have planted it. Mom, I've done research. A lot of research. The note is real. And what it says is true." Camilla pulled out her folder of documents and began explaining everything she had discovered. Her mother's face grew paler with each piece of evidence. When Camilla told her about meeting Jennifer Parker, her mother stood up abruptly. "You contacted them? You told some stranger about our family business?" Her voice was sharp enough to make nearby diners turn and look. "How could you do this without talking to me first?" "I needed to know the truth," Camilla said, her voice shaking. "And they deserve to know what really happened to their family." Her mother sat back down, her hands trembling. "Do you have any idea what this could do to our family's reputation? Your grandfather's store was respected in this community. People remember the Whitmore name with honor. If this gets out, if people start talking, everything he worked for will be tainted. But it was already tainted. Mom, it was built on something wrong from the very beginning." Camilla felt tears burning in her eyes. Margaret knew that. She lived with that guilt for 30 years. "Don't you think it's time we acknowledge the truth?" Her mother was quiet for a long time, staring at the documents spread across the table. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and tired. "Your grandfather would be devastated. He idolized Thomas Whitmore. He told me stories about him when we were dating, about what an honest and hardworking man he was." "I know this is hard," Camilla said gently. "But we can't pretend we didn't find this note. We can't just ignore what Thomas did." Her mother gathered up the papers and stood. "I need time to think about this. I can't process it all right now." She left money on the table for lunch and walked out, leaving Camilla sitting alone with her cold coffee. That evening, Camilla's father called. His voice was calm but firm. "Your mother is very upset. She's been crying all afternoon. I read the documents and I understand why you feel you need to pursue this, but you need to consider what this is doing to your family, to your mother." "What about what was done to the Hartley family?" Camilla countered. "Don't they matter?" Her father sighed. "Of course they matter. But Camilla, this happened over 100 years ago. Everyone involved is dead. What good does it do to dredge up old sins?" "It does good for the truth," Camilla said. "And it does good for Jennifer Parker, who finally understands what happened to her ancestors. Dad, if someone had wronged our family generations ago, wouldn't you want to know?" She heard him take a deep breath. "You're right. You're absolutely right. But your mother needs time. This challenges everything she thought she knew about her family. Give her some space." Camilla agreed, though it hurt that her mother wouldn't talk to her. For 3 days, her calls went to voicemail. Her texts went unanswered. Finally, on the 4th day, her mother called and asked her to come over to the house. When Camilla arrived, she found not just her mother but also her Aunt Linda and Uncle Tom waiting in the living room. They had the documents spread out on the coffee table. The atmosphere was tense. "We've been talking," her mother said, "and we've decided we need to have a family meeting. Everyone needs to know about this." 2 weeks later, the entire extended family gathered at her parents' house. Camilla's cousins, aunts, uncles, and even some second cousins she barely knew crowded into the living room and spilling into the dining room. Her mother had told them it was important but hadn't given details. Camilla stood in front of them all, Marcus beside her for support, and told the story from beginning to end. She showed them the note, the articles, the evidence. She told them about Jennifer and the Hartley family's suffering. The room was silent except for her voice. When she finished, the reactions were mixed. Her cousin David was angry. "You're accusing our ancestor of being a criminal based on some old note and circumstantial evidence. This is character assassination." But her Aunt Linda had tears in her eyes. "I believe it. My grandmother, Margaret's daughter, used to have nightmares. She would wake up crying about stolen things and guilty consciences. We thought she was just confused because she was old, but maybe she knew. Maybe her mother told her the truth." The debate went on for hours. Some family members wanted to ignore the whole thing. Others felt they needed to acknowledge what Thomas had done. A few suggested making a donation to charity in the Hartley family's name. But Camilla's Uncle Tom said something that stuck with everyone. The question isn't just about what Thomas did. It's about what kind of people we want to be now. Do we want to be the kind of family that hides from uncomfortable truths, Or do we want to be the kind that faces them and tries to make things right even when it's hard? After much discussion, the family voted. They decided to reach out to Jennifer Parker and offer to establish a scholarship fund in the Hartley family's name. It wouldn't erase what Thomas had done, but it would help future generations of Hartley descendants get the education that poverty had denied their ancestors. Camilla's mother was the last to vote yes, and when she did, tears streamed down her face. Afterward, she pulled Camilla aside. "I'm sorry I reacted so badly at first. You did the right thing, even though it was painful. Margaret would be proud of you." They hugged, and Camilla felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The secret that had been hidden for over a century was finally out in the open, and her family was choosing to face it with integrity. 6 months after the family meeting, Camilla stood in a community center in Boston alongside Jennifer Parker. They were about to announce the establishment of the Hartley Family Educational Foundation. The fund, seeded with contributions from the Whitmore family, would provide scholarships for descendants of the original Hartley family and other students from underprivileged backgrounds in the area where the Hartley farm once stood. Jennifer had tears in her eyes as she addressed the small crowd of family members, local historians, and community leaders. "My great-great-grandfather William Hartley lost everything in 1889, but he never lost his belief in the power of education. He made his children promise that no matter how poor they would learn to read and write. That promise has been kept through 5 generations. Today, we honor that legacy." When it was Camilla's turn to speak, she held up the pearl necklace, now restrung and gleaming under the lights. "This necklace has been in my family for over 100 years. For most of that time, we wore it with pride, not knowing the painful truth it represented. My great-great-grandmother Margaret knew, and she carried that burden in silence, leaving only a small note hidden in the pearls as a testament to her conscience." Camilla paused, looking around at all the faces watching her. Her mother sat in the front row beside Marcus, both of them smiling with encouragement. Jennifer's family filled several rows, some of them crying softly. "Today, this necklace means something different to me. It's no longer just a family heirloom. It's a reminder that our actions have consequences that ripple through generations. It's a reminder that truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable. And it's a symbol of reconciliation between 2 families, who were once connected by injustice and are now connected by a shared commitment to doing what's right." She had decided to donate the necklace to a local museum, where it would be displayed alongside the full story of both families. The hidden compartment would be opened, and Margaret's note would be shown for the world to see. Some of her relatives had objected, thinking it would bring shame to the family, but Camilla's mother had surprised everyone by supporting the decision. "Let people know the truth," her mother had said. "We can't change what Thomas did, but we can be honest about it. That's the least we owe to Margaret and to the Hartley family." After the ceremony, people mingled over coffee and cookies. Jennifer introduced Camilla to her extended family, including her elderly mother who had known the original stories from her grandmother. The old woman held Camilla's hands and said, "Thank you for giving voice to our pain. Thank you for making sure my grandmother's suffering wasn't forgotten." Later, as Camilla and Marcus drove home to Philadelphia, she felt lighter than she had in months. The mystery that had started on her wedding day had led her on an unexpected journey through her family's history, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths and make difficult choices. But in the end, it had brought 2 families together and created something positive from a historical wrong. "Do you think Margaret knew someone would find the note?" Marcus asked as they merged onto the highway. Camilla thought about that. She imagined Margaret, elderly and near death, carefully folding that small piece of paper and hiding it in the necklace. Had she hoped her daughter would find it? Her granddaughter? Or had she simply needed to confess, even if no one ever saw it? "I think she hoped," Camilla said finally. "I think she spent 30 years carrying that secret, and she hoped that someday someone in the family would have the courage to make it right. She couldn't do it herself because of the time she lived in, the constraints she faced. But she planted a seed of truth and trusted that it would eventually grow." The scholarship fund officially launched the following month. Jennifer's cousin's daughter was the first recipient, a bright girl who wanted to study engineering. At the award ceremony, she gave a speech about how education had been her family's way out of poverty, generation by generation, slowly climbing back from the devastation of 1889. Camilla attended the ceremony and met many more Hartley descendants. She heard their stories about struggling and succeeding, about maintaining dignity in the face of hardship, about refusing to be defined by what had been taken from them. She also learned that the Hartley family had their own heirlooms and traditions, their own ways of remembering their history. They had survived and even thrived, despite everything. One afternoon, several months after everything had settled, Camilla visited the museum where the necklace was now displayed. She stood in front of the glass case, reading the placard that told the full story. Other visitors stopped to look, reading about Margaret and William, about Thomas's betrayal and Martha's resilience, about how a hidden note had finally brought justice, even if only in memory. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, stood beside Camilla and read the story carefully. "That lady in the old picture," she said, pointing to Margaret's photograph. "She looks sad." Camilla studied Margaret's face in the photo, taken sometime in the 1890s. The girl was right. Despite the formal pose and serious expression common, in old photographs there was something in Margaret's eyes that spoke of deep sadness. "I think she was sad," Camilla said gently. She knew something bad had happened and she didn't know how to fix it. The girl thought about this, but she wrote the note. That was brave. Camilla smiled. Yes, it was. Very brave. The girl moved on with her mother, but Camilla stayed a while longer. She thought about how many times Margaret must have touched these pearls, feeling their smooth surface and remembering what they represented. She thought about how the necklace had traveled through time, from Margaret to her daughter, to her granddaughter, to Grandma Rose, and finally to Camilla, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secret. That evening, Camilla had dinner with her parents. The tension that had existed after she first told them about the note had faded. If anything, the experience had brought them closer. Her mother had started volunteering with the Scholarship Foundation, helping to review applications and mentor students. She said it made her feel like she was honoring both Margaret's conscience and the Hartley family's resilience. "You know," her mother said over dessert, "I've been thinking about writing down our family's real history. Not the sanitized version we always told, but the truth, the good and the bad. Every family has complicated stories. Maybe it's time we stopped pretending ours was perfect." Camilla thought that was a wonderful idea. She offered to help, and together they began the project of documenting everything. Not just about Thomas and Margaret, but about all their ancestors with honesty and nuance. They discovered other stories, some heroic and some troubling. They learned that people are complicated, that history is messy, and that confronting the truth is always better than hiding from it. A year after her wedding, Camilla and Marcus celebrated their first anniversary. They returned to the cathedral where they had married, where the necklace had broken and the note had fallen out. They stood in the same spot where pearls had scattered across the marble floor, and Camilla felt grateful for that moment of chaos that had changed everything. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked. "Opening this whole can of worms? It would have been easier to just keep quiet about the note." Camilla shook her head. "No regrets. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it complicated things with my family. But it was the right thing to do." Margaret trusted that whoever found her note would have the courage to act on it. "I'm glad I didn't let her down." As they walked out of the cathedral hand in hand, Camilla thought about the strange way life works, how a broken necklace at a wedding could lead to uncovering a century-old secret, how that secret could bring two families together and create something meaningful from old pain. She thought about Margaret, hoping that somehow, wherever she was, she knew that her message had finally been heard, and that the truth she had been too afraid to speak aloud had finally been told. The Scholarship Foundation continued to grow, helping dozens of students over the years. Each recipient learned the story of the Hartley family and the Whitmore family, learning that acknowledging past wrongs and working to make amends is always worthwhile. They learned that family legacies are complex, that ancestors can make terrible, mistakes, but that each generation has the power to choose what kind of legacy they will leave behind. Camilla wore a different necklace now, a simple silver chain that Marcus had given her. But she thought often about those pearls, safely displayed in their museum case, no longer hiding secrets but telling a story about courage, truth, and reconciliation. And sometimes, when she faced difficult choices, she would ask herself what Margaret would want her to do. The answer was always the same: tell the truth, even when it's hard. Face reality, even when it's painful. And never, ever hide from the past, because the past has a way of finding us eventually, whether we're ready or not.